Hey guys, this is Nitty with Rocket Powered Sound, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make your drops heavier and more headbangable. So the first thing with making your drops heavier, and this is a big thing that I see a lot of beginner producers kind of make a mistake on, is making your drums too quiet. So here I have this project file that I made on my own YouTube channel 2 weeks ago-ish. And I used lots of like Rocket Powered Sound samples. So if you guys have these sample packs, then you can probably kind of like use this as well in your own project files, right? But let me play it back for you, and then you can kind of hear what I'm talking about as I adjust the volume of the drums. So I'm going to play it just at its normal volume, and then turn the volume down of the drums, and then you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. So here goes. Right, so that's the normal volume. Now, if I turn the volume of the drums down, you'll start to hear what I'm talking about, right? So let's give that a shot. It loses so much punch when it's quiet, and the great thing about drums is, especially if you have a more distorted sound that you're trying to achieve, is and when I say distorted, I mean like, you know, your sub is a little bit overblown, like, you know, you're not really like paying too much attention to the mix, right? That's how I like to produce. And if you have that kind of sound, you can actually like turn up your drums like quite a lot before it starts to get like overbearing. So watch as I do this, right? See how much like margin for error there is before it starts to get annoying. So have a listen. I would argue it actually sounds better this loud. Like, let's just see how far we can push it, right? Let's just add a saturator and just like keep turning it up. Let's see how loud we can turn this up until it starts to get too obnoxious, right? I would say right there is like, okay, like that's kind of the limit, especially in these little breaks. You can kind of hear the crashes like are really loud. I'm not gonna absolutely destroy your ears by playing it, but yeah, that's definitely loud, right? So that's kind of where you'd want to be careful. But like, you have a lot of leeway in your drum loudness, and having like a really good foundation of like how loud your drums are is a really great way to make your tracks like way heavier, way more headbangable, as opposed to, you know, this like. So much energy is lost, you know, when you have the drums that low of a volume, right? So yeah, let's move on to point number 2. All right, so point number 2 is to make your sub louder, and I don't just mean like louder as in like make sure it's hitting like the loudest it can get without clipping. I mean like louder. So let me find a sub real quick. I think this is where's the sub at? Should be this. Right, so what I have going on here is I have a Rocket Powered Sound. I believe this is from the bass toolkit, right? We have these like tear out guns, and essentially I just like layer these and use the sub from the tear out guns as the main sub in the song. So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is you can kind of get away with, especially again if you have that like louder crank sound where you're not really like too worried about the mix down sounding like perfect or anything. You can turn up the sub like really loud. And so like check this out. Like, I mean, this is the sub, just the sub like soloed. That's a pretty aggressive sub, and I'll add some like post-processing after to also see how loud you can kind of turn it up. But yeah, I mean, what is this? So this is just the dry. Okay, right. So let's take a listen to like what this would sound like in context if we just turn up the sub. So let's first off just listen to it soloed, right? So let's hear this. Okay, like that. There it's getting obnoxious. But one thing you can do to actually negate that is get a soft clipper. What this does is it essentially imagine you're kind of like rendering out the audio that you have, but then like as an effect. So if this is like clipping really hard, like listen to the cymbals, the hi-hats and stuff being like clipped really hard when I play this back. Like there it's especially apparent, right? You can really hear that like the high end is getting like clipped super hard. If I add a soft clipper after that, what's gonna happen is you're gonna hear that cymbal just like completely come back, and it's not gonna be clipped anymore. So have a listen. Maybe a little bit still. You could probably turn it down a little bit, like with the output knob right here. Absolutely beautiful, and it's like it was never even clipped in the first place. But my point here is to say that when you kind of like lack that like extra like sub cranking, is you kind of like sometimes can, like, unless you overdo it, you can sometimes kind of sacrifice some heaviness if you make it too clean. So like if I were to turn this down a little bit, for example. Obviously this is a little bit extreme. I mean, I'm turning it down like 4 decibels, 5 decibels. That's kind of a lot, but like it does demonstrate my point that like if I just play it back like this, so much power is lost. And if you're listening on phone speakers, you might not really hear this right off the bat. I mean, just comparing it to the original signal. Like, oh, it's wrong, you know, like it needs that power to really hit. So yeah, that's essentially my second tip, is to make your sub louder. On to tip number 3. So tip number 3 is to leave some like breathing room between basses. So this is more of an arranging tip rather than like a like sound design tip, but it will make your drops like heavier in the sense that it's gonna help like accentuate certain parts of your drop. So like when we have a listen, right, I'll kind of like showcase the structure a little bit. So if I'm playing this back, right, so we have these little basses right here that you can see. These are the, by the way, you can get like all these basses, which is really nifty. Like if you want this specific bass, it's in the bass toolkit, so you can get this. But anyway, regardless, we have these little fills playing on the downbeat, right? And these act as, I'm just gonna call them pauses. They're not really pauses because there's a sound playing. Like if it was completely quiet, then I would consider it a pause. Like if I were to take this out. Like then it would be kind of like, okay, that's a pause, right? But like we'll consider it a pause because like you can kind of hear like the main like this stuff is being cut out. Like you don't have that playing in that little pause. Like you don't have that playing in this little downbeat. And so like I would consider that as like the drop hasn't like fully like started yet, as like unleashed yet. So having this little fill and not playing out the rest, like if I were to put this here, or it's like what it is you can hear that like it hasn't reached like its full like openness yet, right? Like this is very dry, and compared to this like main section, which is very wet. Like that's a lot more huge sounding. This is very like closed in, like very dry. And so playing with contrast like that, it really helps you to establish like a contrast between like 2 little bass sounds, and that's going to accentuate this a lot. Like if this had some reverb on it, like this is a whole different. Now this is going to be a bit messy, so excuse that, but have a listen. Right. It sounds like super. This sounds not as bad, but like this sounds super weird all of a sudden, right? Like that doesn't sound right. So if we turn this off, you need that pause for it to have some breathing room. And so yeah, that's just accentuating these other sections of the song and making those heavier in turn. So yeah, let's move on to tip number 4. Okay, so tip number 4 is pick the right drums. So I went for some like very specific drum choices for this, and this is again from the bass toolkit, so you can also get your hands on these. So the thing about these drums is, first off, this kick is very clicky, right? Like it's got like that initial like transient, the little like initial click. It's very strong. Like the body is very strong. Like anything after this, you can kind of see it from the waveform, right? Like. It's a very punchy kick. If I were to get like one of my own kicks from like a year ago or something, like let me see, like some like a really old one, like something like this, right? Like this is a pretty like dirty, I wouldn't say dirty, but like a very distorted kick compared to this like very clean rocket powered sound one. So if I were to plug and play this into the drop real quick, you can kind of hear the importance of having like a clean drum. So let's take a listen. It sounds kind of off-putting because I have a very certain mixdown style, and having that really like distorted over the top kind of kick just doesn't work, right? So what I need is that clean punchy like sine wavy kick that's really gonna help like add so much punch. Same with the snare. Like if I got a different snare, like an older like snare of mine, like let's see, like something like this, right? This is I used to use this kind of snare like all the time. This wouldn't work now in my like current style, right? Especially not in this song. I don't think it would work, at least. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. Let's have a look. It has its charm, but it's like it definitely doesn't fit, right? Like it is very clearly like not following the style of the rest of the drop. So having this like very clean snare that has like you can kind of see it has like a pretty solidly like sine wavy body helps a lot, and like the whole thing is just very clean. I have some reverb on this, so it sounds like this. But it's got like a really clean transient, really clean body, whereas this one has like a very like, you can kind of like see it almost like this has like a really like mangled like transient, and then like the you can see how like distorted it is, right? Like you see this like sine wavy like waveform. Like if you were to like you can see how clipped it is, because it's like going over the top here. Like you can see it from the waveform. This is just and this is just like a mess, right? Not to say that this kind of snare can't work, because I used to use this like kinds of snares all the time, but it's like it doesn't work in this context because like the sound design doesn't back up this mixed down style that I used to have like years ago. So if you were to if you take a look at this, I mean, like this is a lot cleaner. You can see the transient is a lot less like messy. Like what is even going on here versus like this is like super tight, super like quick, and that results in a very clean snare. And yeah, as a result, you are like we're complementing the drop with a nice snare rather than like kind of off-putting it with like this weird like distorted snare that doesn't actually make sense. So like oftentimes you'll find that like playing with the contrast between clean drums and like filthy sound design is a really cool combo. I don't know if I've ever seen like clean sound design and then like disgusting drums work, but maybe there's an exception. I think just clean drums will always be a good move, unless you're like specifically trying to make like a very dirty song. Then yeah, having like dirty drums also works. But yeah, choosing the right drums for this was very, very important. Otherwise, it doesn't hold up, unfortunately. But yeah, on to the next tip. So one mistake I see a lot of beginners make is that their mids aren't loud enough. So if we were to just solo the drop groups, just the basses, and I were to like take an EQ and just kind of turn down the mids like this, you'll kind of see what I mean. So I'm not turning everything down, like the sub is still like the right volume, but you'll hear the mids are like everything is like too quiet. So have a listen. Like it's not that bad, but it's like you can tell it's missing something, right? Like and so what I think a lot of like beginner producers, like the mistake they tend to make is they think like the issue is that they don't have enough elements, like background elements, for example, when really all you have to do is just make the mids louder. Like, and the reason this is because like when you look at like a waveform of like your like this kind of relates back to your drums. So if you take a look at like your like if you were to take a rendered waveform of the drop, hold on, let me demonstrate this real quick, of your drop with louder mids and then with quieter mids, it relates back to your drums in the sense that you like the snare has a certain like level, like volume level to it with the like transient and tail, and if like the mids, like the basses and stuff don't live up to that, then like your drums are just gonna feel like they're like standing out too much, and like it just doesn't, it won't feel right. So like let me demonstrate this to you. So have a look. So this is the snare, right? have the snare right here. You'll notice that like this, like you can kind of see, so like whenever you see like a huge like black blob of like waveform, that usually indicates that there's a lot of high-end content and like mid-end content. You can see that here, it's very consistent. This is the louder mids version. You can see that this is like very consistent, right? You have the snare hit, I think, right here. I couldn't even tell you where it was if I were to just kind of like look at it like this. I don't know where the snare is, and that's good if you're like well, not always, but like, you know, sometimes. In this scenario, I think I would consider it a good thing, because it means that the mids are like very nicely like equally up to standard with the snare. Now, of course, there's probably going to be some exceptions. Like if I were to turn down the drums, I had like 9 dBs lower for like one of the examples. Let me render that out real quick. You can see that also. Whoa, what is this waveform? You can see that this also kind of like manifests in. Oh right, we still have the mids turned down. Sorry. Let me do that one more time. So absolutely painfully quiet. So you can see right here, kick is too quiet. The snare is what, right here. You can see there's like a little dip right here. You just don't want that. You want your song to be a nice sausage, basically, like this. Like you see, this is like a brick. This is like, let's see, this one is not as brick full. It's weird terminology. This one is not as like sausaged up, you know. This is the one with the reduced mids, and you can kind of see like this like gradual like volume drop off between, and it's like the rides are like kind of like causing like that like you can kind of see that like pattern, right, where like every quarter note you can kind of see like there's like volume spiking up. Yeah, you don't want that. And same with this, you can see like there's inconsistencies in the loudness, and like you can hear it very clearly if I play this back. It's very like there's something wrong with it. And that one's nicely mixed. So yeah, essentially make sure your mids are loud enough to complement your snare, and just make sure that they're it's mainly your snare, but like make sure they're complementing your drums nicely, and that way they'll be sit at an equal volume, and then you know you'll have a lot more heaviness and headbang ability to your track. So let's move on to the next tip. Okay, so the next tip is to fill out the background a bit more. So one thing I did in this track is I have this little sustain bass right here. So if I play it with and without real quick, you'll hear kind of the difference. And let me turn the drums back up. Right, that's with, and then without. It's kind of missing something, and the issue with it is like when with this specific drop pattern, like the dun 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 dun, right? There's with the quarter notes specifically, which is right here. There's nothing like you can kind of see this like big gap of like sub. There's like no real like mids content. Like if I just play that, there's nothing there, right? And so the issue with that is it's harder to carry through the energy like that unless you like stretch this out. So I mean, I could take this and like make it double the length, for example, and that would probably solve it, sort of. Like if oh, that's kind of sick actually. Like it works, but there's definitely some like gaps that need filling out, right? Like, especially because like this half is like a color bassy section. Like it's going to be a lot more lively because it's melodic. And so when you switch from melodic to heavy, yeah, you kind of get that issue of it doesn't feel filled out enough. And so what I did essentially, I just added in a sustain bass on top, and this just fills out like the background nicely, as in like it just adds like an important element of like filling out that empty space that is left by the sub, just like having like this empty space, right? Like here, like you can see all these like little sections where the sub is only playing. Yeah, it plays a very important role in making sure that this like switch up section is filled out. So in that scenario, like it's important that you do fill that out with something. But in other times, like I wouldn't need a sustain bass in this section, because if I did add this here, suddenly it would be too much, right? Like if I play this now. Like now this section is taken away from this section because this sustain bass is here. If I remove it, I'm able to play with that contrast. And so yeah, that's why filling out the background sometimes is important, but then sometimes not is also important. So yeah, you got to pick and choose your battles. You know, make sure you choose wisely. So yeah, let's move on to the next tip. Okay, and then the last tip for today is pick a headbangable pattern. Now, if you're trying to make your music like specifically headbangable, what's important is that you like pick something kind of a bit more predictable. So like something, if you're familiar with, for example, like Phonon Polyrhythm, that is like the most chaotic dubstep song that I can think of off the top of my head. It's not very headbangable, but I mean, it kind of is, but it's kind of not, like especially in that like switch up section where it goes all crazy, if you know what I'm talking about. This is like a pretty predictable flow. Like it's just pretty straightforward, like eighth notes, like there's like only one like section where it's like deviates from that and like quarter notes, right? I bet you it would be even more headbangable if I did like something like this. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens if we do this. Right, like it's kind of it's a lot more predictable, and so like it's easier to like you got to kind of think of it as like how consistent is the pulse, or like how easy is it to follow the structure that you've got laid out, that you laid out as the producer, right? So in this example, yeah, like you've got this kind of like this. There's this like concept. I don't know if it's like an official term, but I call it like micro rhythms. I learned it from Virtual Riot, and it's basically like this. The micro rhythm of this is like eighth notes. Like you've got like this da 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 da, right? Instead of just bam 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 bam, right? If I were to do this, it would be a whole different story. It would be a different like micro rhythm. Which is also sick, by the way, because you've got now you've got this like super headbanger thing, and that's also another thing is you could just do quarter notes, right? Like that always works. That's a great way to get a headbangable song. Sounds a little silly there because of the sub thing that I described earlier. But if we double time this, it should probably fix it. Let's try this out. Oh, that's sick. That's great. Like that's a really sick switch up. So yeah, essentially like picking your patterns is very important. Like having especially something just like on either every like quarter note or every like half note is like very, very important for like having something headbangable. So quarter notes being this, right? You could also do like I've seen lots of, and I've done this myself as well, is like doing like half note patterns. This is also like a cool little thing you can do. Is if I were to extend this and do this. It doesn't work in this context because there's like a whole lot of other stuff that's kind of reinforcing the quarter note like groove of it, but like there's definitely times where you can do like half notes and it like works really well. I can't really think of any songs off the top of my head, unfortunately, but yeah, just as long as you have like something like that's like consistently hitting on the kick and snare, that is going to mean you have a very headbangable song. So yeah. That is pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, all these packs that you see in this video are available for purchase on Rocket Powered Sound's website. So yeah, thank you, Rocket Powered Sound, for having me, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.